Okay, apologies for that. We are currently then in the fourth industrial revolution, which overall, I would say, is characterized by this massive interconnectedness of human and machine and the blurring of lines between the two, the interaction, the interconnectedness, not just of devices, but also of the interaction between man and machine. It brings about the fusion of technologies in the physical, in the digital and biological domains to help us achieve what was not previously achievable. All right, and just to continue in this thread, this fourth industrial revolution is not just about manufacturing. It is a paradigm shift that technologies that have been developed is bringing about in terms of various areas, including business model innovation, technology innovation, and so on and so forth. It's going to change the way we do things, and so on and so forth. Now, a key thing, some people do not even believe that we have this so-called fourth industrial revolution. It's debatable whether we have or whether this is just an evolution of technology as opposed to a revolution as is talked about. I don't believe either way we should worry too much about, except for one thing, particularly for us as the continent of Africa, which is that this is simply giving us an opportunity to focus our energies and our efforts into getting our continent and our people into this next era that is facing the world and is coming, whether we like it or not, it is upon us. A framework just to think about the fourth industrial revolution is going to affect a number of sectors of the economy. It'll affect society, industry, as well as business. As I indicated, things such as business model innovation, particularly in business, will be important. I recently had the opportunity to visit a Siemens factory on additive manufacturing in Germany. And what they are doing is business model innovation, where they are bringing together clients that require parts or devices as well as service providers on a platform that then links the two. There's vetting and so on and so forth. And that's a business model that previously wasn't thought of to enable the advent of additive manufacturing or 3D printing. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this business model innovation. Okay. Okay, apologies for that. Again, I don't want to go through all that is within this slide, except to say we all know that this fourth industrial revolution encompasses a whole range of technologies from big data and analytics, augmented reality that makes us do things better, perhaps such as training and so on and so forth. Cloud computing, the Internet of Things, interconnectedness of devices, and the massive amount of data that results from that, and the required processing power. Advanced manufacturing, I've just mentioned it, advanced robotics, and others. Okay, I thought perhaps it's important for us to see where we are as a continent and to determine where we would like to go, and so on and so forth. So, the World Economic Forum has recently developed a data-driven tool that assesses the readiness of various countries to enter or to capitalize on this era of the fourth industrial revolution. It is a tool that assesses the maturity of a country and the readiness of its economy for getting into one of the four quadrants that are indicated there in the plot. Ideally, you would like to see yourself in the green quadrant, top right-hand corner. Just to fast forward, most of our countries in the continent are in the bottom left-hand corner, which is not exactly where we want to be. However, we would like to move into the green quadrant. The country, so the plot's x-axis is about the state or structure of production of a country and the drivers of production for each country. As I indicated, you can see that most of our countries there in the red dots are in the bottom left-hand corner. I thought I would pull out from this state of readiness report. You can look it up yourselves. It has a report on the state of readiness of each country. I wish I had time. I could have brought up all of SADC's reports, but I just brought up one. And for South Africa, where I come from, and the summary is that South Africa's share of manufacturing has decreased to 12%, partly because since '94, we've been exposed now to the rest of the world and there's more competition, whereas previously we were closed and therefore there was less competition and more monopolies within our economy. Stronger structural production in the continent, ability to innovate is a strength, and human capital remains a key challenge, as well as the need for South Africa to improve its institutional frameworks. Positive is that there is a relatively stable policy framework, and this requires South Africa to direct its innovation policy effectively. In the African context, all of the 15 countries assessed fell into the bottom left-hand quadrant, which means we have our work cut out for us as a continent. However, it's not all gloom and doom. Compared to the rest of the world, adoption on the continent remains low. The biggest challenges remain digital skills, connectivity, accessibility, and more private and public investment are required. However, Africa has that advantage over the developed markets because it is not weighed down by infrastructure legacy issues, meaning old infrastructure that is not suited to the fourth industrial revolution, which means if we do make investments in those infrastructures that are aligned to the fourth industrial revolution, such as communications infrastructure, we will be in a better place to catapult ourselves forward in this regard. This is just a list of some of the areas of the fourth industrial revolution, but 4 key requirements that I believe are needed for us to be able to move into that next era: a conducive and supportive policy environment, state support instruments, R&D innovation investment, as well as public and private partnership models. Okay, just a quick overview of where I come from. CSR South Africa in numbers, about 2,500 people, about 2/3 of which are in R&D, which we call the set base, science, engineering, and technology. Total income about 2.5 billion rands, new technology demonstrators 50, 19 patents, just all in the last financial year. And the total investment in human capital development of 120 million rands. These are the areas that we have chosen to operate in. Essentially, how we've approached it is to study the structure of the South African economy and choose those areas where we believe science and technology can make an impact if we invest and direct our efforts at. And the areas that are indicated advanced agriculture and food, chemicals, manufacturing and mining, next generation health, defense and security, and then the three smart places, next generation enterprises and institutions, in essence here, the digital domain, as well as smart logistics. And fourth industrial revolution is embedded in all these. In order to enable this to happen, what we've chosen to do is to have a program that creates facilities whose objectives are indicated there to enhance industry competitiveness, improve efficiencies, develop new products, shorten time to market, and develop skills for industry as well as access to infrastructure. The 5 facilities that we have are listed there, from biomanufacturing to biorefinery to photonics to micro and nano devices. Just an indication of some of the facilities we have. What I want to almost get to the conclusion about last 2 points. A major point around the fourth industrial revolution is that this era brings with it major challenges that are societal, that involve, for example, as you would have experienced, issues around privacy, issues around ownership of data, issues around ownership of information, for example, about individuals, and so on and so forth, and what can be done about those. It's just a sprinkling of issues that arise. Well, the World Economic Forum has recently established a collaborative center called the Center for Fourth Industrial Revolutions, which focuses on these governance issues that come with the advent of the fourth industrial revolution. And the idea here is to have a global collaborative platform that brings in players from around the world who are then in a position to can jointly begin to experiment or research these areas, the implications of governance issues around them, and propose policy positions as to how, going forward, such matters can be dealt with. So with the bottom left-hand corner, the main centers in San Francisco. We've just recently established one in South Africa, which is an African one. It is a collaborative effort. I welcome and invite all of you to join us in South Africa in getting this to be shaped to address issues that are impacting on us as a continent and going forward. And these are the partners that we envisage will be part of this center. And Skills 4.0, critical in the fourth industrial revolution, is the skills. I think this is probably one of the most important elements of fourth industrial revolution. It's going to require agility in terms of us as human beings to adapt quickly to a very rapidly changing environment that will then require us to be trained or retrainable in order to upskill ourselves. And the training will have to be frequent because the change will be that rapid. And therefore, one of the projects that we have entered into in South Africa at the CSIR is what we call the learning factories. The learning factories essentially are a partnership between us and technical and vocational training colleges to train artisans, from artisans all the way to graduates and PhDs on this fourth industrial revolution in an environment that is a factory-like setting, so that by the time the workforce goes out into the workplace, they are skilled enough in these areas. I would like to leave you with just those words, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the opportunity to have spoken to you about what we are doing in this area. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tingo. Let's give him another round of applause. Thank you. I hope you're having your questions and comments handy, because after we get the next two presentations, my co-moderator will take over. We'll have some interventions from our two panelists, and then after the intervention from the two panelists, we will then open up to the floor to make some comments. So I'd like to call on Ms. Knox Mayaki, who is going to present from where she's sitting, and she will give us the next presentation, which are quite linked to the presentation we've just had, because she's going to focus on issues of data, so the importance of data. You heard from our first presenter that the fourth industrial revolution is really going to be driven by data, and for you to work in the area of artificial intelligence, again, is driven by data. So everything is about data, data, data. And the new coining that's going around is that data is now the new electricity. That's going to be the new electricity for the world. It's about data. So thanks, Knox. You can take the floor.
Good afternoon, everybody. Habari zamchana. So I'm representing our center manager, Dr. Happy Sitole, who was with us, but he had to urgently return home. Okay, investments in big data for industrial development and competitiveness. So I will not go so much into the fourth industrial revolution. I think Dr. Klingo has done well, but I will just add that it integrates cyber physical systems, the Internet of Things, big data, high performance computing, robotics, artificial intelligence, based systems, and additive manufacturing. Now, these are some of the opportunities and the platforms, the technologies that will come with the fourth industrial revolution. Advanced robotics and new platforms of automation, 3D printing, blockchain and distributed ledgers, new materials, quantum computing. So for us in high performance computing, the next level that we are now looking at is towards quantum computing. These are the opportunities and challenges for the youth. So we have a lot of training that we are providing at the Center for High Performance Computing on some of these. These are areas around robotics, Internet of Things, high performance data. Oh, now it's ran. Okay. Artificial learning. These are just high-performance computing, cloud computing. So these are the threats. These are the careers that are currently under threats. These are just some of them. Careers that tend to be more repetitive. We will see less and less of the humans in those careers, and replacement by machines. These are bank tellers, quantity surveyors, journalists, legal assistants, finance assistants, and there's new opportunities. For instance, if I may give an example of myself, I trained as a science journalist, but I know based on this fourth industrial revolution, I now need to upskill myself to be able to not be left behind by 4.0. So now I'm moving into data journalism, combining the traditional journalism with data, extracting data to be able to communicate it. But there are opportunities. What are the new opportunities? There's new careers, bloggers, sustainability manager, drone operator, instead of data collectors, apps developers, social media strategists, data scientists. So along with the challenges, there's also a lot of opportunities. So there's no fear that you need to have, except that we need to prepare better. This is the rate of automation, also taken from the World Economic Forum report of 2018. In 2018, the human jobs were 71%. percent, machine 29. Look at 2022, 59 and 42. 2025, the prediction is 48 and 52. So we will be surely seeing less and less human in the current job market and more machine. These are some of the drivers of change going into this new revolution. Advanced manufacturing, we've spoken about it, artificial intelligence, robotics, But number one, look at number one, processing power, big data. This is also according to that report by the World Economic Forum. Now, coming to where we are today, a number of strategies by SADC have, culminated into the cyber infrastructure framework, where the countries, the member states, said, okay, we need to now have our own high-performance computing systems for the region. This is where the region plans to cooperate, the researchers in the region plan to cooperate on research of mutual benefit. We know that certain countries have challenges that are common to each other. South Africa might have a drought problem that is shared with another country. There could be a national security problem that the researchers of different countries could collaborate into. Health issues, drug design, and there's a lot of them. So this framework was signed off by all the SADC ministers in 2016 June to say that we need to now establish a center where our researchers will focus on regional challenges, solving regional challenges through computing. Now, these are the components of the framework. It talks about policies. What are the policies that will enable the establishment of this data center for the region? What are the computational resources that we need, from high-performance computing, hardware and software, to the applications? What applications will be utilized, will benefit from high-performance computing? Data tools and facilities. Where is it going to be, this data center? And also, how do we fund, what are the contributions of member states into this data center for the region? National research networks, specialized broadband infrastructure networks, and service providers for education, research, and innovation. A lot of the countries in the region, almost all of them, have national research networks, which connect all the institutions, research institutions, academic institutions, to be able to share the data, to transport the data from one to another. Human capital, how do we train and upskill our people to be able to use the cyber infrastructure that the region will have? It's a pricey infrastructure, but it's for the world good and for the good of the region, but we need to know how to best utilize it. Now, why high-performance computing? You have an idea, and you want to send your idea, your product to market. Now, what happens between the idea and the product? You have to do experiments, and you have to prototype. Now you bring in high-performance computing. This will now aid your competitiveness. You have virtual prototyping. So from the idea to the product market, you build a bridge via high-performance computing. You model your product on high-performance computing systems. If your product is manufacturing cars, you bypass the physical experiment and prototyping of constantly crashing cars, because that process is very pricey and takes a lot of time. Whoever is able to do their research in less time is going to run the market. You have to outcompete. In our high-performance computing, we say to outcompute is to outcompete. So this is again the chain that you go through in your design of product. You design it, you build it, you test it. now it's not really what you wanted. You fix it, you go back to square one. You design again, you build, you test. And it's again not it's not performing the way it should. You go back. And the cycle continues. So this is a technology development continuum. Basically, again, we build the bridge between basic research and commercialization. This is in established businesses. They also go through the same. From, you model your data, you visualize, you go through the system again over and over. This is in long-term companies. High-performance data analytics trends. So you go from your desktop, you model the development of your product from the desktop. And some institutions have small clusters, so they run their data through their owned smaller clusters. But now for the prototyping, it needs to go to a higher level, that is now high-performance computing. The higher you go into that triangle, the higher the accuracy of your actual data. Okay? All right, so the basics of high-performance computing. What a lot of people, we have a stand here, and a lot of people have come to ask us, what are the basics of high-performance computing? So what we have here is a lot of computers. Imagine your desktop computer, a lot of them stacked parallelly on top of each other, but connected by cables to operate as one computer. So here they are, a lot of parallel computers stacked together and connected by cables, and they all those rows, they all run as one computer. In South Africa, we have a petaflop system. It's been the new one that we have now, has been there since 2016. It's rated among the top 500 fastest computers of the world. It was initially at number 121 of the world's computers. It's currently now on number 463, meaning it's now in its midlife. We need to do an upgrade to it because also the usage of that computer is now at 85%. If we allow it longer, then we will have long queues of people waiting to process their data. We also have a GPU, and we have a lot of chemistry users and people that are in animation and film. And I'm just going to go through quickly some of the projects that we are doing, the applications of high-performance computing. If you visit the South African stand, you will find a lot of these projects there. We talk about them, aerodynamics, companies coming to us and asking us to design and to assist in the design, to inform, to model the design of buildings, high-speed trains, satellites. Mintech also, we have, they are using our CFD models to also simulate some of their work. And this is acid deposition over coal mines in one of our provinces to check what is the impact on soil, on agricultural soil of that acid from the mine. Weather and climate applications, we are, the Center for High Performance Computing is also the failover for the South African Weather Service. When the Weather Service has a problem with their system, we simply assist them and we process the data we do to assist with the prediction of weather. Okay, so now quickly, in the high performance computing systems, what we've done also, another project that we've done for the region and for some of the states that will be hosting the square kilometer array satellites. So we've got some friends in the market, because we've been in it for about over 12 years now. What we are doing, we've made strategic relationships to receive recently retired equipment, computer equipment, from specifically from the US and other countries, and then we take it and we distribute it to countries that are interested in establishing a high performance computing human resources to train their people. These are for training. We receive them for free, and you can't really call it e-dumping, because these are systems that are 2 years old. Our system, like I said, is 6 years old. So it's still things that countries can use, and those have gone into the member states. We support in information and training on power cooling. These machines need a lot of cooling. You can see some of the examples. Unfortunately, I can't see it very well on my screen, but they've gone to these universities on the screen, and a lot of training has been put in place as well. Okay, this is a cluster that has gone to the University of Botswana. Zimbabwe now has also their own high-performance computing center, which South Africa provided advice on, how to set their system up. And some of our team, including Ms. Zintle Sandai, who's here, they went to Ghana also to put together the Ghanaian cluster. Ghana will also be a host. They are not SADC, but they will also be hosting some of the dishes of the SKA. This is some of the training at the Texas Advanced Computer Center, training for the member states that have received the high-performance cluster. This is also in the US. You will see some familiar faces maybe in these pics. This is also in Colorado, in the US. The student cluster competition. So what we are doing also to improve the pipeline, to get the taste of high-performance computing in the youth, we also have a student cluster competition where we take second year, third year computer science, engineering students, and we train them. They've never seen a high-performance computing, never, ever. We train them, and South Africa, and they go and represent the country abroad. South Africa has won this international competition against some of the world's best countries like US, Germany, China. South Africa has won 2013, 2014 runner-up. 2016 has won it, and even this year in June, South Africa came first. And we are currently establishing a regional high-performance computing center where we want the region to also participate and send students and get the taste of high-performance computing. This is on the screen. We have an example of all the list of research networks that are in SADC. But now the challenge with these networks, now currently each country has their own. The next step now is how do we get the South African network to share with the Tanzanian network and to share with because now we are transporting this data and it's globalized. Oh, sorry, conclusion. Cyber infrastructure is going to play a huge role in developing industrial development in the region. So this is, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Knox. Thank you, Knox, for the presentation. Let's give another round of applause. Thank you. Without wasting any time, we'll have our last presenter for this session, Dr. Amos Nunguf, the Director General of COSTECH, and he will be presenting us on the investment, the importance of investing in research, science and technology to foster industrial development. Dr. Nungu, the floor is yours. 15 minutes. As you hear, the timer goes off. When 15 minutes is done, you're going to hear the timer going off. The floor is yours.
Ladies and Chanya, good afternoon. So my talk, the topic I was given is, oh, it takes time. Research and innovation, investment for industrial development and competitiveness. Oh, seems as if I'm going in the opposite direction. Trying and it goes. Yes. So I have to come back. Oh. This one here. Once, okay. Change, okay. Thank you. Then go for it, okay. Good. So, because I would like to have more discussion, so I will take a few minutes in my presentation. And I said I have an introduction, the prerequisite, the Tanzania experience, and more on the regional collaborative efforts, because we are now in SADC. So that is the layout. And starting with, I thought because research on one side and innovation on the other side, then research, in a simple term, it is a fact-finding mission. And the innovation, for the sake of this talk, it means technologies or practices that are new to a given society, but not necessarily new in absolute terms. So something might be, oh, is moving on its own. Something might be, is not new to South Africa, but to my home village is new. So that's innovation I'm talking about here. But it seems as if, I'm moving too fast. Something is not happening. Yeah, I'm trying to go back on this one. Takes time. Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah. This is for going back. Okay. Oh. Good. Okay. So let me use this one here instead of that one. So on the introduction, first the definition, but now the experience, funding, research, and innovation. And by the way, research, I'm trying to think in terms of, we talk about the science and technology. Here, all of them are in the research category. But in most study countries, they fund applied research, not basic research. But we know the really innovation are coming from the basic or pure research. So that is my first observation or experience. But also, the private sector hardly fund research at all. There are a few cases, but mostly they don't fund research. And the main source of research funding comes from the government. So putting all the three together, and according to the report, which was published this year, the state of South African research enterprises, it showed that only 0.3% on average of the GDP fund research in Africa. So that one can give you a picture where we are. But I think for the industrial development and competitiveness, it is important to have policies that recognize and support local innovations which make use of the existing knowledge. As I have noted, very much we find applied research, but not basic research. So for Africa, for SADC, we should, if possible, emphasize on the local innovations which make use of the already existing knowledge. And I've cited a few good policies or plans and strategies that exist. They include the African Union Agenda, the SDG 2030. Yesterday, we were talking about the SADC industrial strategy and the roadmap. But locally in Tanzania, we have the Tanzania Development Vision in 2025. But also, ERA, we have 5-year development plans, which gearing towards the vision in 2025. These are the few, because I said the local policies, I know each SADC country, they should have their own policies which are complementing the African and the world policies. But also I'm highlighting a few, an experience from Tanzania on the historical perspective for the research and innovation. So as you can see, Tanzania was among the first countries to implement the UNESCO initiative recommendation to establish the Science and Technology Framework. So we have the National Scientific Research Council was established in 1968. And our first Science and Technology Policy Framework was done in 1985. And the first Science and Technology Act was done in 1986. And later revised in 2001. So COSTECH was established in 1986 together with the Act. But in 1990, the Ministry of Science and Technology and Higher Education was formed. 1996, the National Science and Technology Policy was revised. Then you can see it goes that, the policy, because now it was the Science and Technology, now 2006, there was a proposal now initiated to include the innovation aspect. So before it was only Science and Technology. So now innovation came into the picture in 2008. And the ministry now, Ministry of Communications and Technology, because before it was the Ministry of Science, Technology and Higher Education. So 2008, it was the Ministry of Communications, Science and Technology. And 2016, we have the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. So also, COSTECH has been moving between the ministries because it is serving the science and technology aspect. Also a bit on the innovation aspect. As I said, 2008, that's when the discussion on the innovation, the revision of the science and technology framework, the policy was started. But 2011, that's when you have kind of see more on the innovation aspect. And there was the establishment of the Technohama Business Center incubator, which is an ICT incubator that aims to serve as a hub for technology startup. And I would say many ICT startups graduated from the incubator. In the same time, we had a project known as the TANS ICT, which established an innovation space known as Boon Hub. But also the project championed the innovation ecosystem in the country. And today, I would say, we have a good number of innovation spaces and other actors in the ecosystem. But since we're talking about SADC, I think regional collaborations are needed in order to foster the innovation, the research and innovation to be able to bring about the development and competitiveness in these countries. So I'm looking into we have the SICE program, Southern Africa Innovation System. And this one, even the name goes Southern Africa. So it touches some of the SADC countries. And it is an initiative that supports the growth of new business through strengthening innovation ecosystem and promote cross-border collaboration. But also we have the Science Granting Council initiative, also in Sub-Saharan Africa. Almost all the SADC countries are included. This one aims to strengthen the capacities of 15 science granting councils. So when I say science granting council, COSTECH is one of them. In South Africa, we have NRF. So in each country, the 15 countries, the idea is to support research and evidence-based policies that contribute to the economic and the social development. So you can see SICE is much more on the innovation, but the second one is on the research aspect. But innovation is the part of research. Also, as I'm calling for more regional collaborative efforts, we have the regional centers of excellence. A number of them exist, and at least we have 4 in Tanzania. But I think more could be done here because we have common issues. For example, I would say we grow cassava in Tanzania and in Malawi, for example. So we could have a center in one country which cater for the other countries instead of each one having their own initiatives. But this year also, research chairs also is a good thing to promote research. And as I noted there, we have the Oliver Tambo Research Chair Initiative. It is in progress, but more is needed. And the last one, I think we need more collaborative postdoctoral research programs because they build the capacity, which leads to the desired competitiveness. As I mentioned, the Center of Excellences, the 4 Center of Excellence in Tanzania, which Tanzania is hosting, but for the region, we have the African Center of Excellence for Innovative Rodent Pest Management and Biosensor Technology Development. There is the Southern Africa Center for Infectious Disease Surveillance, and the other 2. But all of these, they serve not only Tanzania, they serve Africa. So they train, they do research collaboratively. So my call was, if we can do more on the collaborative projects, being it research or innovation, then we do justice to the SADC region instead of each country going on its own route. Thank you. Asante sana.
Thank you, Dr. Nungu, and thanks a lot for sticking to the time. I just want to switch off my timer here. Yeah, so thank you. Let's give our presenters another round of applause. Thank you. So we heard 3 very good presentations, but very interlinked presentations. So the first presenter, you'll recall, spoke about the 4th Industrial Revolution and really touching on the issues of the new technologies that are coming out, the importance of human capital development, the importance of investing in human capital development, but also the importance of investing in research, development, and innovation. Our second presenter spoke about the using high-performance computing as a platform for technology development, for prototyping, for industrial development. You showed that it can be applied in different sectors, in the area of climate change, in the area of mining, in the area of the manufacturing, but also in the area of weather services, and how this supports our enterprise development and industrial development. And our last presenter spoke about the importance of policy, because remember, many of us have very good policies as Africa, but the challenge is in the implementation of those policies. So it's important to take track and take stock of what investments are there as we implement these very beautiful policies that we develop. As you saw, the Tanzanian policy framework, but also the institutional mechanisms that are put in place. But you can see that the main funding still remains around funding for research and development. And you saw from the presentation that as Africa, we're still spending very low on research and development. We're still investing very low, on an average of 0.3%, whereas the global average is supposed to be 1% of GDP investment for R&D. So these are the areas that came out of the presentations. I will now hand over to my co-moderator, who's then going to ask our esteemed panelists to talk more about these issues, and then we'll open up the floor for your interactions. Thank you. Dr. Flora, the floor is yours.
Habarini za mchana, shikamooni wakubwa, wadogo zangu hamjambo. So let's switch gears. I'm going to ask the two panelists who have been pre-introduced to just say a few words about what it is they do, and then I'll ask them a question or two and open up for the floor so that we can actually have a conversation rather than have the high table speaking and you listening, because this is not really a seminar. So shall we start with you, John? If you can just tell us a little bit of your background and what it is you do so that we can tie it into the three presentations that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. And thank you for the opportunity to be part of the panel discussion this afternoon. My name is Professor Maulilio Kipanyula. I'm the Director for Science, Technology, and Innovation under the Ministry of Education, Science, and Technology. And my main responsibility is to coordinate science, technology, and innovation at policy levels. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Fuzlin, I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Good afternoon. My name is Fazlin Levy Hassan. I'm the Interim Chief Executive Officer of the Technology Innovation Agency in South Africa. We are a funding institution that effectively fund research and development into commercially viable products. My background is innovation, venture capital, so quite excited to hear the questions posed this afternoon and respond to it. Thank you.
Thank you to you both. So just to start off, I will ask them a question each so that they can expound a little bit more on what it is they do and the wealth of wisdom that they bring to the panel. And then I will ask the floor to address questions to all the panel, both the panelists and the main speakers. And I'll start with you, Professor Kipanyula. So we've heard from the first three presenters really what it is that is an opportunity, fourth industrial revolution, high performance computing, what policies are in place. But I think the big question for some of us who drive or support entrepreneurs is really, how do we get these products in the market? What are the challenges then? What are we doing as a country, as a bloc? What should we do to get products faster into the market?
Thank you, moderator, for the question. For the products, for the innovation products to reach the market or the industry, there has to be a demand. Now, what I'm seeing in most of the SADC countries, most of the innovations are not driven by the industry. They are driven by passion. Meaning that at the end of the day, you get an innovation, but there are no consumers for that particular innovation. And that is one of the challenges that we got to deal with. The other thing that I would like to point out is that we are suffering from a very weak linkage between the developers of innovations. And in here, I'm referring to the individual innovators and the research and development institutions. The linkages I'm talking about is between these institutions and the individuals, the government, and the industry. Because of this weak partnership, we end up with the hanging innovations. Innovations are developed, but they are not consumed. Why? Because there is no communication between these three entities. The other point that I would like to make is that as a SADC region, we are not doing very well in terms of providing the proper support mechanisms for taking the innovations to the end users. And in here, I'm referring to initiatives like venture capitals for driving the innovations to the market. On that aspect, we are not doing very well. The fourth challenge that I thought I should bring up is the lack of appropriate infrastructure for further development of innovations. Most innovations, when they come up, they are not ready for consumption. In a way, there has to be somewhere where they will be developed further, where they will be nursed to shape them to be ready for the market. On that aspect, we are still struggling. I understand that countries like South Africa is doing far better than the rest of the other SADC members in terms of having a good number of technology stations. Countries like ours, Tanzania, we are struggling with coming up with innovation hubs, which at the end of the day, we think they will assist in trying to shape up innovations to make them ready for consumption. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you very much, Prof. Kipanyula. So maybe, Fazlin, you want to take us up, and I know Tia does you've got a pipeline of how you fund innovations and how you drive to get them through the market. Can you just speak from your own experiences, what are the opportunities and the challenges there, while touching on a little bit of what I think Prof has mentioned, especially with regards the mechanisms of how you get funding and what innovators should consider when they move from their innovations and push them out to the market, because he says there's a low uptake of innovations that come out from what we produce.
Thank you. Let me just start in saying that what we as SADC has done is that we're very good in research. But then the question is, how relevant is that research, and what is the appetite of the market for it? 2 weeks ago, I attended a forum where one of our national research foundations said, historically in South Africa, we wanted to actually have more postdoc students from historically disadvantaged individuals. We wanted to have more women, and yes, we ticked the boxes. But we're having all of this research, but very little of it being translated. So now there's a key focus in South Africa to basically look at what the requirements are of our country, and then to do the necessary research accordingly. So I work for the Technology Innovation Agency, and we are a funder. And I'll never forget when I worked with an entrepreneur in the medical device industry who has had 30 years of international experience in commercializing products. And the one comment he made about funders is, he says, we fund entrepreneurs where we believe that there's a market. And I was very insulted, you know, because we work on research, this is the market size, this is the market demand, who are your competitors, etc. And he said, and we having this challenge in South Africa, where all of that was done, yet uptake in the market is, we're still fighting 10 years later, is because the biggest failure is that we haven't gone to our private sectors. We haven't gone to our institutions and say, what do you want us to fund? What is the need? So there's that concerted effort that needs to take place there, and there's a realization. The second thing is, entrepreneurs generally think that funding is the beginning and the end of innovation. It's not. What we've realized in South Africa is that funding is the start, but an entrepreneur needs hand-holding. Very few entrepreneurs have commercialization experience. So there's lots more than funding to make a successful or to support a successful entrepreneur. Interesting facts, I just want to state that in Africa, there was a study done by the World Health Organization that there are more cell phones in Africa than what there are toothbrushes. So quite an interesting statistic. You know, we talk about fourth industrial revolution being expensive, but I had an entrepreneur that needed prototyping done, but they couldn't afford a 3D printer. And what he did was he designed his own printer. We have the youth now that use the cell phones, and they can develop the most amazing of apps, videos that are top dollar just by using equipment that is readily available. So lots of challenges, but a lot of excitement. Just wanted to say, Tanzania, don't feel bad. South Africa, or we has the Technology Innovation Agency, has entered into agreement with COSTECH. COSTECH, as you said, their strength has been research, and we're working together, South Africa and Tanzania, to look at collaboration. And we've got 4 potential research projects that we currently co-funding, and to look at successful commercialization of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fazlin. I'm going to open up now for questions, and when you ask your questions, please tell us who you are, who the question is directed to, but I'll also take the opportunity to ask any other presenter or panelist to respond if I think that they have a valid contribution. So we'll take a round of the first 4 questions, and then, yeah? Yes, you mention your name and where you come from, please. So we'll take 4 questions, and then we'll ask the panelists and the presenters to respond, and then we'll come back with another 4 questions. So I'm going to be very gender unfriendly and start with a lady. So which lady's hand up was first? Start with the young lady in the front with the white jacket, and then Mama Maleko, and then yourself. So that's 1, 2, 3, 1 last hand. Did I see another hand? Then the gentleman in the front there, okay? Is that order correct? Vincenzo, you can start.
Thank you so much, Dr. Flora. And my question goes to Fazlin. Okay. So a lot of innovation and good stuff are coming from SADC region and from Africa. But we are not telling these narratives ourselves. So our position is SADC in the world of innovation. Who tells our stories? Because we hear innovation, we hear about Silicon Valley, we hear about all this kind of stuff, we hear from other people. And sometimes they say that there are no innovations in Africa, which I don't believe. So who tells our stories, and how prepared are we as a SADC to tell these stories, to tell these narratives in a way that we understand the innovation from our own settings. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, thank you very much. Mine is an observation and also a suggestion rather than a question about how innovations reach the market. I'm a marketer by profession, and my name is Jacqueline Nenei Maleko. I'm the coordinator of the African Material Research Society conference, which is scheduled to take place in Arusha, which I think everybody is going to register for it because it's addressing exactly the gap between innovation and action. But why innovation is not reaching the market is specifically because most of the innovations are not market-driven. And this is what Nelson Mandela University, the Center of Excellence, is trying to address. You don't just take a PhD or a master's if you are not addressing a certain inadequacy in the society. So if we have market-driven innovations, somebody is sure that after this innovation is going to the market. And there's no mechanism to market the innovations. You know, scientists are not marketers. They do innovations and put in the shelves or publish, that's it. So you must also link with the marketers who know how to market the thing. Another thing is we don't patent our innovations. This year, Mr. Mpemba, when he was secondary school many years ago, because now he's a grandfather, got an award from the US. This poor African boy, when he was in secondary school, discovered that if you put hot water in a fridge, it becomes colder faster than cold water. This was just business as usual. Can you imagine after 50 years, he's getting an award? Imagine how many things emerged from that innovation. There's no mechanism to put incentive to our innovators. And innovators are not only the educated or the academicians. There are people in the villages, they do enormous innovation, but no mechanism to nurse the innovations. But another thing is overregulation. You innovate something, by the time it gets to the market, you have passed through a number of regulatory mechanisms, and they are inadequate. How many TBS laboratories are there? How many certification laboratories are there? So let's encourage private certification laboratories and researchers so that we can nurse our innovations. But most important is, look now, the African Material Research Society is bringing 1,000 scientists from all over Africa and other parts of the world. The whole idea is to share research results and innovations. Fine, the meeting will take place. But who is going to incubate and nurture the outcomes? I hope this is going to be one of the SADC deliberations that it is coming to Tanzania in Arusha. You will participate and have an opportunity to nurture the research results, to network with more than 4 Nobel Prize winners of science and other scientists so that we can nurture it. And it's coming in all the sectors, mining, health, agriculture, and everything. Let it not be business as usual. Let's nurse them, incubate them for the benefit of SADC countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Maleko. And you?
Thank you. I'm David Msabi, an expert in regional integration. I would like to ask one question directed to the Managing Director of COSTECH, Dr. Nungu. My question is, in his presentation, he mentioned one thing, that most of the private sector, they are very reluctant to fund some researches. But recently, we have seen in other countries, especially United States of America and some countries in European Union, most of the research have been funded by private sector, especially Total, Google, and to mention there are many. So I would like to hear from him, his perspective about the initiatives that COSTECH is taking or putting in place so as to attract more funders from private sector, because I believe that research is a way of sharing knowledge to bring innovation and to save people's life in a variety of spheres. Thanks.
Thank you. I will just take the last question and then we'll allow the presenters to respond and we'll take another round. Okay, so the last question was at the front. Gentleman in the jacket. Yes, that was you.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Dr. Salum Kihemba, Executive Chairman, Kisan Group. My question, I'm directing it to Professor Kamanyula, and I would like also, if there will be space, the representative of Innovation Development Agency of South Africa to respond to it. Issues to access to funding is a major question to Africa, given the structure of our financial situations. Professor Kamanyula has, on his presentation, has named issues of support mechanism. And on that point, he mentioned issues like venture capital integration to the situation as one of the means to finance, to support finance. Because we all know right now, access to capital is available to people who already have capital. If you go to a bank, they ask you for collateral. You don't have a collateral if you are you're starting an innovation. But, people who already has capital has the access to capital again. So what are the things that they have in place right now, or what are the solutions they're trying to come up right now to address this situation, to make sure access to capital is available to people who really needs it, and it gets there at the time when it is really needed by those people. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions, and I'm going to ask them to be responded to in the order. I think, Fazil, you have 2 questions, and then I'm going to ask every one of the presenters and panelists to respond. I know it was a remark, Mama Maleko, but I think they have also some contribution to that remark and probably would like to make some commitments, if any. And then Dr. Nungu, I'll ask you to respond to the last 2 questions, to the question on the funding, and Professor Kamanyula also on the one with the support mechanisms. Okay, thank you. So we start with you, Fazil.
A very, very good question about the good stuff coming from Africa. I walked into my current position on the 13th of June. And my agency does the most amazing of investments. When you hear it, it gives you goosebumps, it humbles you, because these are not generally your scientists that came up with innovative products. It's basically, for example, a youth living in the township that has developed amazing technology. I don't know if it's a culture thing in South Africa and in Africa, is we don't like telling our stories. And that is one of my main drivers, is that every month we should be going out and telling our public what we do. And I think we need to do that because we do a lot of amazing things. The saddest reality as well, as much as we develop great technologies, the reason why we don't hear it is because we haven't managed to successfully commercialize it. Do you know that Creepy Crawly, the swimming pool cleaner, was developed in South Africa? There was a hob that you can put onto your table that you can effectively have barbecue or bride meat that won the most innovative product internationally. But that product was developed by a South African who struggled to commercialize the product and effectively closed down the company. An American company, I think, let's say, hypothetically gave him $1, and then they commercialize the product. So these are challenges Africa's having regarding commercialization, and we struggle to find the people with that skills. I just want to come back, the one thing we said is about patents. When, in my venture capital days, when we looked at technological innovation that was globally unique, our whole focus was basically to fund patents, but with patents there comes lots of other challenges and complications. You know, there's the provisional patents, then you've got to look at jurisdictions, and then it becomes extremely expensive. What we've learned, our lessons learned in South Africa, is that patent only when really necessary, because what we also realized that, and we've had an experience with one of our investee companies, was we funded them. We had patents in the USA, major European countries, and then what happened was our patent was copied. Now, we didn't have the big pockets to basically go against the American corporation. So patents are good because it gives us a name, it gets us known, but on the entrepreneur side is also extremely expensive. So that's my response on the innovation. Madam Chair, do you want me to answer the fourth question as well that was posed to me on just what is available as mechanisms?
Yes.
Yes,
Please.
okay. So access to funding, always a challenge. In South Africa, especially with my agency, is we've got a lot of smaller funds that looks at grassroots innovation, youth development, that we actually provide small amount of fundings to individuals, and it's in the form of grants. I just have to say something that was mind-boggling to me, that there was a professor of Oxford University who visited South Africa a few weeks ago. And he said when they started their technology fund at Oxford, they only had, I'm just going to use it just for the amount's sake, that they had 200,000. In 10 years, that grew to almost 2 billion rand. And the reason for that, he says, you should never give entrepreneurs money for nothing. And I looked at him and I thought, wow, but we want to stimulate the economy and innovation. And he said, you give entrepreneurs money, if they're not successful, they don't have to repay you. But when they are successful, the least you should get back from them would be your cost, or cost plus return. So a very valuable lesson. Then you have the challenges is that in venture capital, your venture capitalists would ask you for equity. Most of your entrepreneurs don't realize it, but we give off equity so easily because there's no fork out of our own money. But when that business becomes successful, then you realize that you shouldn't have so easily given away your equity. So we looked at mechanisms at the Technology Innovation Agency where we've got grants. We got something called a conditional grant where we provide entrepreneurs with money. And when they're successful and they start generating revenue and they're cash positive, they then will pay us a percentage of the revenue amount then as a return. So there are lots of instruments out there, but we also have to realize that our fiscus are diminishing. Every year our budgets get smaller as development institutions, and this is where it's so critical to get into the collaboration with the private sector industry to work on investments together. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe Prof. Kipanyula, you can take the next.
Thank you, moderator, and I would like to take this opportunity to also thank all those who have asked very good questions. Starting with a comment by Madam from Nelson Mandela African Institute of Science and Technology on why innovations are not going to the consumers. I'd go back to my original statement that innovations should be driven by markets, should be driven by the industry. In that way, it will be easier to gain access to the to the end users. With the issue of access to funding, there are two sources of funding for innovations to be taken to the market. One is funding from the state, and two, funding from the private sector. Now, as technocrats, we ought to make our governments understand that innovation is equally important as investing in any other projects. Now, if we don't do that, it will be very difficult for the governments, talk of Tanzanian government or any other SADC country government, it will be very difficult to realize that investing in innovation pays. Experience from countries which are doing very well in terms of science and technology and innovation, countries like South Korea, these governments have realized that real wealth is in innovation. And if you invest in innovation, that is where true wealth can be generated. So my emphasis here would be, we technocrats, let us play our part to make the governments understand that innovation is also worth getting investment. What we are doing in terms of trying to address these hurdles, from the Tanzanian experience, the DG Kostek, when he was presenting his paper, highlighted that we are operating using the science and technology policy. So we have realized that innovation is an equally important entity. In so doing, we are now revising the ST policy to become the STI policy. And in the STI policy that we are revising, we are pretty sure that issues of funding mechanisms, issues of linking the industry, academia, and the government will be well articulated. And in that way, we should be able to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then Dr. Nungo, I think the last questions, but I'd also ask you to comment a little bit when you speak to the private sector funding limitations and what you're doing to attract that. Can you also speak towards what Mama Maleko mentioned, is allowing private facilities to, considering private facilities to have accreditation that would give products and services market compliance, because the public facilities are limited in that?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, for the good and wonderful questions. So starting with Mama Mareko, the current law, they don't prohibit using the private facilities. As long as it is certified, then it can be used. So we don't have any issue on that one. If there are issues, then I would like to know them and then we can rectify it. So it is working fine. But there was a question, who tells our stories? Yeah, that one I would say the institutions, through their PR offices, are trying to tell their story in their own ways. So I know it's not enough. So we need help. If there are better ways, we can partner to tell the stories in a bigger ways. We welcome the effort. Now coming, what strategy are in place to attract the private sector? Yeah, I would like to start saying, it goes back that the private sector, most of the companies, the big ones in our countries, some of them, they are branches, where the head offices are either in Europe, USA, where the research is done. And I think that's why the topic was research and innovation, investment for industrial development and competitiveness. So we needed to increase our competitiveness so that, we can attract those funding from the private sector. Because part of it, maybe we're not competitive enough, maybe, but mainly the headquarters, that's where the money is coming from. But second, the private sector, they fund either for profit. So if there is no profit, they can't fund. But there's a chunk which is the corporate social responsibility. Our strategy, as you asked what our strategy, as I mentioned, I think going together, the regional level, collaboration, that we can build the capacity, being able to be competitive, so that, a university in the US, a private sector in Tanzania can say, funding research in Tanzania will have the same result as in the US, but with the less charges. So first of all, competitiveness, that's what we're focusing on, that, can we work together to build the capacity for our researchers? But second, also looking into, as I said, even the governments, they find applied more than the basic research. In that respect, and coming back to the comments from the others, that let us look into the market and see what are the demand. I think there was a comment that, we should visit this, private sector and see exactly what are their challenges. As much as the research is done at the headquarters, but there are specific issues which are context-specific to the area, which they wish to be done locally. And if we know them very well, then we can convince them, to kind of give out the money. So it is kind of something which we have identified, realized that, there's a challenge, but it is not in vain. We are now starting to make a pre-arranged marriage, because COSTECH, we are not doing the research, but we are connecting. So trying to see how can we link the researchers, the institutions, and the private sector. So that is something work to do, and it is in our plans. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to ask Dumiso and Knox a question each, because I noticed they did not get a question this round, which I'm going to ask you to hold on to, and then I'll open the floor again for another 4 questions. And when we come back with the responses, then you can provide me with those 2 responses, at least 4 to inform. So I'll start with you, Knox. It's great. I really like your adage that outcompute or outcompete is to outcompete. It sounds great, but the question comes, this is HPC, big technical term. We're developing countries. What kind of industries would benefit those warehouses of computers? What is our, what's the word? Capabilities. Where are we in terms of a block? South Africa, you're quite well advanced, but what kind of industries are best suited? How accessible are those HPCs for an SME if they were to approach and say, I want to rapidly prototype and get my product to the market quicker? Okay, so please hold on to that question. Annaline echoed what Dumiso, you said earlier about 4th industrial revolution is upon us. There's no way some parts of it have actually advanced. Some of it is where we are now, and we are experiencing it. Everyone around us is walking around and collecting and analyzing large amounts of data. What are we doing with it? Who owns it? Who protects it? And I think that's those are probably some of the issues that this data center that you talk about, Center of Excellence in South Africa, is probably going to be looking at with regards to governance. I want us to tie that in when you give us a response to my question with our commitment to R&D as a block. We heard 0.3%, that's quite low. Why are we not getting there? How can data and information further inform our policymakers to get us there faster? Will this center actually contribute towards that? So hold on to those 2 questions, please. And can I open up for another round of 4 questions? So, yes, this time I'll start with the other gender, my husband's gender. So, and I'll do it from the back. Question number 1. Number 2, gentleman with the white shirt. And then we'll have a lady in the black jacket and checkered. And are you, I can't see, I'm 4-eyed, but I can't really see. Okay, and the lady right at the back. Can we have those 4? And then we'll, oh, okay, my apologies. So we make an exception with, you will be the 5th question. So we'll take 5 questions this round. So we start at the back there.
Yes, so my name is Warren, digital officer, and I currently work on renewable energy sector.
Can you speak into the mic? We can't really hear you. Speak into the mic.
Yes, I'm Warren, and I'm currently working as a digital officer at a renewable energy company. I have a comment and a question. I'll start with a comment. So, in simple way, the 4th industrial revolution is basically merging of the imaging technologies and the 3rd industrial revolution outcomes. And so, for example, merging electronics with internet, you bring IoT and etc. The issue that we have currently in the SADC is basically not using these imaging technologies effectively to integrate them in the 3rd industrialization outcomes. So, and in addition to that, we are currently progressing into another phase of the 4th industrialization, which is basically merging quantum computing and the imaging technologies. So we have like 2 areas to tackle. The current one, the imaging technologies, and the coming one, which is on its way. We currently have prototypes of experiments done with qubits and qubits, etc. So the questions, what's the plan of as a SADC to keep up with these changes that are happening very fast in terms of first raising awareness in the community as the consumer side and in our curriculums, because currently we're talking about spreading the innovation, but most of our education systems are not well integrated to these new revolutions. So starting from scratch on the education level, is there any plan that as SADC that we have to maybe make these curriculums hybrid so that they could keep up with the emerging technologies? That's one.
Can we limit you to 1 question so that everybody can get around? Sure. Otherwise, we'll be out of the time for the session. Is that okay? So the next question. Yes? Can we make it quite quick so that everybody gets a chance to ask their question? Thank you.
My name is Chris Ruiza. I'm a business developer and owner of PMTL. We have developed a platform for virtual classes whereby in Tanzania and Africa, we have a gap in learning. Like you find one class, one school has many professors, but the other one has less professors. So with the virtual class, we make use of few professors to teach other students from the other universities. We tried to work with Mzumbe University, but the problem is so actually we tried to work with Mzumbe universities, and okay, sorry, it's bit complicated. Yeah. So we developed a system, the virtual classes, to teach distance learning people who have less staffs. I mean, the colleges which has professors, they can.
What is the question? Can you skip and just go to the question? What is the question and who is it directed to?
Okay. My question is, I'm coming from I'm an entrepreneur. Okay, fine. I'll speak in Swahili. I try to speak in Swahili. Yeah.
Yes.
So tumetengeneza system ambayo
Tumeelewa umetengeneza system ya kufundishia.
yeah, tumetengeneza
Tunaomba
system.
tuambie swali ili
Sawa.
tupate.
Tumetengeneza system ya kufundisha ambapo walimu wanaweza kufundisha wanafunzi ambao wako mbali. Kwa mfano unakuta shule moja ina walimu wengi, shule nyingine ina walimu wachache. Na kwa kutumia system hiyo unaweza ukakuta kwamba tunapunguza gap ya gharama ya kusafirisha walimu, wanafunzi na saa nyingine kufundisha kufundisha wanafunzi kutoka sehemu mbalimbali. Sasa swali langu ni kwamba tumejaribu mimi kama business developer wa hii kampuni nimejaribu kukutana na institutes tofauti hapa Tanzania kama VETA, COSTECH ili waweze kuadapt hiyo system. Lakini nimekuwa nikipigwa danadana, yani kila siku naambiwa next week na vikao ni na nini na hiki na hiki. Kwa hiyo kama na hii system uzuri ni kwamba inaweza ikatumika hata kufundisha Watanzania, yani kwa mfano University labda of Cape Town inaweza ikafundisha.
Naomba nisikukatize. Swali lako ni kwamba unawezaje kupata audience na taasisi ambazo wangeweza kuadopt system yako. Hilo ndo swali.
Yes, correct.
Nadhani limeeleweka. Twende kwa binti dada pale nyuma. Samahani, I don't even know if you speak.
My name is Mary Kate Leopold. I'm an economist, but working in a research field. I have a question to Dr. Amos Nungo and Professor Kamanyola. In your presentation, you popped a thing about we have a lot of unpending renovations, and knowing that you as researchers or dealing with research, you have a lot of data in your institutions, not only in your institution, in all the SADC regions. So my question is, what is the way forward? For I know data disruption is one of the major problems that we have right now. What is your way forward on utilizing the data that we have in your hub or systems to solve all the problems that we have in SADC regions? And also, to the lady who is from South Africa, she also talked about data. And in her presentation, she talked about how technology is going to replace the human labor. My question is, there are a lot of opportunities. You also show that despite the bank tellers and other maybe surveyors, they're going to lose their jobs, but they'll be replaced by other, which are more automated. But still, with the present technology we are in, youth unemployment has been one of the major problems. So, by the rate of reduction of human labor, what room have you prepared for you to tackle as SADC region, to tackle the problem of youth unemployment, even with the digitization and technology that we are heading to, as the 19th declaration of SADC is saying? Thank you.
Okay. Can you take, I think the second last question, and then the lady in the back, and then yourself. Technology failing us. Is there a mic close by that she can use, please? Can you speak into the mic?
Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Hello. Okay, I hope you can all hear me now.
Can you speak louder? We can't hear you.
I think it's the mic.
Can somebody assist us? In the meantime, can you ask your question while she figures out a mic?
Hello.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think you can hear me now. My name's Patricia William Olel, and I'm an entrepreneur. And my question is around the platform. And now that we all want to get out and people can see us as innovators, creative people, but once you try and look for funds, I think most of us know we have to go through competitions or innovation challenges. But also when you try to reach some of the sponsors that are on private sectors, they tell us they don't support seed because seed is not a fruit. So you have to start from somewhere. And so this comes around accessing to funds. It's a problem. So I came across different people with common interests, and who we formed a group called the Young Creative Entrepreneurs, so that we can work all together at once, because we didn't have a platform. And in Tanzania, getting a platform so that you can express yourself, you can showcase your product, other people can see it. It's really difficult. So my question is around that part, and I will say it as, what plans do you have to bring together the young or the small entrepreneurs who are innovative, creative, and now that the technology is here, who don't have access to funds to showcase their product? How will people know these people that we have in the community? Because we are just looking at those who are not, who have already been seen, but they are people who have very nice things. They're very creative and innovative at the ground. Who goes to the ground and who can bring these people who don't have even access to come to town and come to this meeting and showcase their product? We came along this guy who has gone to Costec, like my friend there who has been speaking, gone to Costec, all these places where they support funds, but he's still working with his technology on hand. And he tells you that technology is very beautiful and very nice. So we just had to welcome him to this entrepreneurs group. But also, this group wants to go around and collect these people. So I will also say, how will these people be seen to the world? And how can they get the publicity? Do you have any platform? I know some of the magazines that people have trying to showcase their product, but how can these people underground in the village, how can they be known? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take our last question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad for this chance. My name is Charles Faustin. I'm an engineer and director of Lani Electricals Company Limited.
I think put the mic closer to your mouth so that we can hear what you're saying.
Okay. I'm Charles Faustin, electrical engineer, but also a director of Lani Electricals Company Limited. And my question goes to Professor Kipanyula. During your presentation, you said on your second point that you are suffering to get a link or connection between three entities, and that is the government, innovators, and the end users of innovation jobs or projects. And my question is there because I've been also a victim, and when I was scaling my undergraduate studies, I witnessed my fellow students from diploma and bachelor. In reference to our country, students cannot graduate until they design a project, especially for engineers. They have to design a project for them to be awarded a diploma or a bachelor degree. And when they design these projects, they are really good projects. That's why they qualify to graduate. They are working, they are practical, and they are really market-oriented. They are on demand, and I can tell it's very innovative projects are there. But in the end, as Madam from Mandela said, you know, those are engineers. They are not marketing officers. So they just design, they are good at that, but they cannot handle the market because it's not their profession, they are not expert on that. And end of the day, they just design and they leave it to college and it's the end of the story. So I just get my certificate and I cannot carry on with my project, it's done. So I'm asking, and when I heard your point, my blood boiled, and I was like, oh, now you know the problem. You know, we are missing that link. A lot of projects are on the shelf. So what will SADC do now to help to fix that link that is missing? And so what do we do? Do we see a new future for those engineers who are designing those projects? Or it will just bring again those disappointments? We shall just carry on with the same phase that we can be also designing and do the same while we are industrializing the region. So thanks so much, and I would like to hear from you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll come back to the panelists and presenters, and maybe we start now with you, Knox, and then Dumiso.
Okay, so the first question is, how accessible are these HPCs? HPCs are very expensive to keep, to buy, to manage. They really cannot be owned by an individual. It's really to the owners of governments who see this as a priority into their national development, and large organizations that see an economic advantage into having these HPCs. In South Africa, the South African government saw this. You know, okay, initially how we started as being a component of the University of Cape Town. So then the national government decided, no, this should actually be a national facility. Then all the universities can benefit from HPC instead of committing this to an individual university. But in South Africa, we preserve 70% of our HPC cluster to academics. That is mainly our master's and PhD students, and also academic research institutions. And then 30% goes to industry, South African industry. We also, internationals do also use our cluster. They connect to it via networks, but it has to be on condition that they are collaborating with the South African. So what are the industries that can benefit from HPC? They are really very broad. Any industry that manufactures products, the products that may take a lot of time to design, the modeling can be done on HPC clusters. On screen, you can see the movement of everything that you need to be done. We've got people in pharmaceutical industry that are using our HPC clusters in drug design. If I may make an example, you know, in South Africa, we have a problem with tuberculosis, and some people were not taking their medication because it was activating on point of swallowing. When it touches your tongue, it activates and releases material all the way down your trachea and creating infection. So drug design, one of the projects was to cover, this company designed a capsule to cover that drug that it releases only when it gets, where it needs to get to. That's just an example. Then we've got users in animation. We actually trained little kids, small kids in primary school. We bring them in. They've never heard of this before. We put a computer program on Scratch. We make them create games, computer games. This is not something, this a child that has never, from a village, has never seen this before, and they can do it. That is animation. Also gaming. You know, as you know, these games are created, you know, using very good computers and GPUs. So there's a lot of use. Like I spoke about earlier, you know, the manufacturing of cars, high-speed trains, and petroleum industry. One of our users is actually a petroleum fuel company that is designing a fuel that is, I cannot talk about it right now, but it's a fuel that will advance the performance of cars even more than what we have currently. I missed that first question. It seemed like more of a comment.
Yes, which on the first comment that he made, I think he wanted to say, what are we doing to keep up with the changes? So things are moving so fast. What are we doing as a region to keep up with regards education, with regards awareness? Because if it is going to be market driven with all these new products, but the market's not ready for it, then there's probably a mismatch. So what are we doing?
Yeah, in South Africa, we have, you know, an organization that is solely responsible for science communication. That it falls under the National Research Foundation. It's highly funded to communicate what is happening in our sciences. I think the lady over there also raised, you know, what are we talking about these things? I think also platforms like these, us coming here and speaking to the people, we annually we have events that we target where we go to the people, but I must say that it's insufficient at the moment. We could be doing more, and I know that there's a plan in South Africa to going to 2030 to implement more robust science communication, to say what do we have now, what will we need in the future, and how do we get there. And I think Anneline will take the question on youth development in this SADC framework as it is currently now in the implementation phase.
Okay. Thank you. Dumiso?
Okay, thank you very much. Just to respond to what is being done to increase investment in the SADC region from the average, African average of 0.3%. I think when one looks at the efforts around the high performance computing, that's one approach. Noklolo showed, yes, that the investments in South Africa have been quite intense, but even intense though they may be, we still slip up behind the rest of the world in a matter of 2, 3, 5, 10 years, and so on and so forth. So investment in high-end equipment is important in order for us to keep up. And the sharing of such equipment in the region is also important, not only to have access to the cutting edge, but also to develop skills in high-end, in high-performance computing within the region by installing what may be 2, 3-year-old systems, but it brings the skills into the area. This brings me to a third point or a point that I wanted to mention, that we should keep in mind that investment in R&D, not only by the private sector but by government as well, has 4 key elements to it. It is, well, the people, the skills or from the entrepreneur or the researcher and so on and so forth. But also a key and critical element is the infrastructure required for that. And then that can attract the funding, because with skills, infrastructure and funding, you can then be able to conduct research. However, one key element that has been mentioned before is that this must be done in order to address a market need, an existing need, not just conducting research for the sake of research, to address a need. What we need to keep in mind, so those are the 4 elements, what we need to keep in mind is the fact that we've learned time and again that investment in R&D is not an overnight thing. It's a long journey. It's if you are in it, you have to be in it for the long haul. You do not invest today and expect returns tomorrow. We've seen this time and again in various platforms and so on and so forth. And I think this is something that we need to keep in mind. Somebody asked the question, why is R&D spend not coming to Africa, to the continent? And I think one of the elements is that we're not having all those 4 key elements in place: people, our infrastructure, funding, and the market. The funny thing is that, Europe, the US, and the rest of the world, in terms of skills, the brains, they take brains from Africa. They are able to employ our people. Our people go overseas but it is because they've got the funding and the infrastructure, and they're trying to address the market. The one thing that they need that cannot be a monopoly for anyone, it is the brains. We have brains, and they have brains, and when they're in shortage, they do come and take brains from Africa.
Okay, thank you. Then, Dr. Nungu, I'm going to ask you to address 2 questions, because I think they're quite linked. Is the question from the gentleman who has this virtual class platform and the platform for bringing SMEs from the grassroots together and giving them a voice, or at least an opportunity of where they can showcase their products. While you're doing that, I will also ask you to address the question that was presented last of, yes, there are a lot of good innovations out there, or inventions and innovations that have been developed, but they're not getting out there. Professor Kipanyula, I'll ask you to take off also that question and talk to the disruption of data that was raised by the lady who does economic research. And then Fazlin, I'll ask you to speak about the new jobs opportunities, and I think there was issues of what happens when we have 4th industrial revolution and we still have a big burden of youth unemployment. And I think, Knox, you might also want to mention something along those lines if there's enough time. I know we're running significantly over the time of the session, so I'm going to ask you to keep your responses quite short. Thank you.
Hello. I'd like to start by asking this group here today to attend tomorrow's session, because most of the answers to the unanswered questions will be answered tomorrow. As I said in my presentation, the innovation ecosystem started in 2011 in Tanzania. And we started with 1 incubator, 1 hub. Today, we have about 45 innovation spaces and similar in the country. So, I mean, innovation is still new. And the work is going on. But now, to answer the questions, what I would say, I mean, both questions, they pointed to 2 issues. Resources are scarce. The knowledge is, the awareness, the knowledge is not yet sinking in, and the ecosystem is still progressing, is not very well perfect. Because there was a question, I mean, where do we go? The guy, I mean, with the classroom platform. So it touches about the ecosystem, I mean, where do I go? But the girl, I mean, regarding the funding, it goes back, I mean, it is a seed, it's not a fruit, we can't fund. Tomorrow you will be told, I mean, family, friend are the initial funders. That's what I'm saying. I mean, tomorrow you can get more information, but it goes back to the awareness. But the third one, it was about, I mean, every engineer who's graduating must do a final year project. So every engineer who's graduated is an innovator. That's what I said, I mean, and because I'm graduated, then the innovation was, there was a demand. That's why he graduated. Yeah. That's what I said, I mean, tomorrow you can have more depth information, but put it simply that, I mean, we need to have, I mean, that ecosystem that, yes, this guy, this innovator here, a young one, where do they get the right information about the funding, but about the viability of the project? Because the project was only for graduation. Does it really have the prerequisite to the market? Tomorrow, those speakers will be able to answer because of the time. Yeah, but also coming back to the first I mean, where to showcase. As I said, it is work in progress. This year we've started. Last year we had the guideline on how to identify and support the grassroots innovators. This year we've started in March. There was the national event. So if we missed you, then I know the next round we'll be able to bring you on board. But it goes back that not every engineer who has graduated is an innovator. Because those, I mean, the competition will still be there. There will be criteria. Is this an innovation? Does it have a future? So if it is my innovation, yes, I trust. But the experts will tell you yes and no. So we should be able to accept it. And COSTECH, we are geared to, as I said, we are working in progress. We are starting to give out that, I mean, awareness creation. And I said we have already partners. We have 45 hubs and more coming. So we are trying to work with them to be able to reach out to the youth and try to create more awareness. So to me, it's kind of calling out tomorrow, everybody should attend. Asante.
Thank you for the opportunity to respond to some of the questions. I'll be very brief. There was a question on what are the plans to make use of available research data. I'll point out on some of the initiatives the government is doing, the Tanzanian government is doing. We have started mapping out research outputs. And the concept here is that once we know what is out there, then it will be easy to come up with a database. And from a database, we can easily pick out some that require further development. And with the existence of a database, then it allows others as well to come and shop from that database. I'll explain a little bit on what are there platforms for young innovators to showcase their innovations. The answer is yes. As the DG COSTECH pointed out, the ministry has started conducting the National Science and Technology and Innovation competitions. And this is an annual event. My appeal to the young innovators is that whenever the adverts are out, please come out. You'll have the opportunity to showcase your innovations. The other question was on the existing gap between the innovators and the end users. From the government point of view, we have started identifying all locally developed technologies. And at the end of the day, we are going to come up with a database. And it is from there we'll be able to select those which require further development and support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fazlin?
I'm going to let Knox answer the question of human versus machines and the employment there are. But I just want to say that in South Africa, one of my executives made this to me, and we must always realize this in Africa. When I was part of a panel and I chaired a fourth industrial revolution session, one of the professors said in South Africa, we're basically going to go from the second industrial revolution into the fourth. And we effectively almost bypassed the third industrial revolution. But in South Africa, as much as we've got 4IR initiatives and we're working towards it, we got probably hundreds of thousands of people that are still collecting water. And so that's the challenges we have in Africa. So fourth industrial revolution, yes, it's one thing, but we also got developing country challenges. Statistics have shown that where the countries that have been successful in terms of high unemployment, entrepreneurship then reigned because people had to be more innovative. What I do here, and it's so true, is just how do we as government, private sector, then get together as a collective to stimulate entrepreneurship and make funds more widely available. Knox, I'll leave that question to you about the machine versus human.
I think Faslin has effectively answered it, that yes, we are, and I think most of the African countries are, we're at a place where we are living the fourth industrial revolution, but we still have to deal with some very basic primary problems. And so it's not going to go away that we have to address the unemployment issue in that sense. I'd like to just ask Annelien to come back and close the session. But with that, thank you very much for allowing me to moderate.
Thank you, Flora, and thank you to our presenters and panelists. Let's give them another round of applause. I think Flora, Dr. Flora did an excellent job to keep us awake, but also stimulating the discussions. We have our rapporteur here. Auni, please stand. Who's been taking some notes, and we will make sure that your inputs are not lost, they go into the report. But what I forgot to mention at the start of the session is that these sessions this meeting that started on Monday, that was opened by His Excellency, the President of Tanzania, is that we are going to put all the proceedings into a declaration. So this declaration is going to be presented to you on Friday, where you need to adopt the declaration, because this declaration will be adopted by the heads of state during their meeting in the coming week. As you know, our meeting ends here on Friday. The conference ends on Friday, but at the same time on Friday, the Council of Ministers meeting will start into next week, and all SADC heads of state will be convening in Dar es Salaam in a week's time to convene their the summit meeting. So this declaration, as the outcome of this conference, will be tabled to that meeting. So don't feel despondent that your comments and questions are going to be lost. We are going to capture them into the report, but also make sure they find their way into the declaration. So I know there was the issue about the youth, how youth unemployment is going to be tackled in the SADC region. We are taking this matter very seriously. As you can see that the previous theme, or the outgoing theme for the current chair, because Namibia is the current chair, Tanzania has not yet taken over the chair. They will officially take over the chair during the sitting of the heads of state, and the theme was really focusing around youth unemployment and infrastructure, but industrial development. So we do have the SADC Youth Declaration, which is in line with the AU decade plan on youth, but we are now in the process of developing a regional youth innovation and entrepreneurship program. And we want this program to be practical, starting off obviously at a national level, because for you to do anything at a regional level, you need the member states to set up the foundation at a national level. You've heard in Tanzania, they've launched this year the National Science Awards, or Innovation and Entrepreneurship Awards. So we want all member states to have these awards, but we want to convene a regional Innovation Awards program, where we can then take these national winners, then they go into a regional competition, and then we also give regional prizes. But it's quite critical that we give incentives to private sector. How do we incentivize private sector to partner with academia, to partner with researchers, so that they can invest in those technologies and those innovations? So you take in a country like South Africa, for example, they've got the R&D tax incentives. So if private sector invests a certain percentage of their of R&D in the business, they are able to get a tax break from the revenue service. So how do we encourage more member states to have incentives for this private sector so that they can take up and support these young entrepreneurs and invest in those technologies? But it's also quite important that we don't leave out our local authorities, because we tend to focus at national level, and we talk about industry, but we don't focus on the middle, which is your local authorities, your councillors, because the local authorities or the local government are the ones who are at the grassroots level. They are the ones who are sitting with the budgets for service delivery. That's where the innovations are supposed to be supported, at local level. So we need to get the local government and the local authorities to put in a fund at COSTECH to say, as the district of whatever, we put X amount of percentage into COSTECH, but we want these innovations to support this local authority. It could be around housing, it could be around water access, it could be around electricity, it could be around waste management, it could be around agriculture. So the local authorities, we always leave them out into this discussion. It's important that we bring them on board, because they are sitting with the budgets for service delivery. So, and that's a message I want to stress to the policy makers who are sitting at national government, that there needs to be this strong relationship with local authorities and the industry in those local authorities. Important that we invest in human capital development. We need to increase our scholarships that we give to our researchers, to our students, but also importantly, we need to continuously upgrade our curriculum and our education system. As you heard, we are in the advent of the fourth industrial revolution. The education authorities need to upgrade the education system. We need to include issues of entrepreneurship in the education system. We need to increase the uptake of STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, from primary school level. We shouldn't target high school, but from primary school level already, the kids are supposed to be doing robotics. They're supposed to be looking at issues of intellectual property. They're supposed to be looking at issues of entrepreneurship. So at primary school level, we need to introduce robotics to the kids. But also, we should not leave out the teachers, because remember, the teachers are also being left behind. The teachers need to be upgraded. Their skills need to be upgraded, because we need a new teacher for the new classroom. The old classrooms are going away. We're having classrooms of the future where you're not going to have a chalkboard, but you're going to have digital boards. Kids now in many schools, they are using iPads or tablets, where the curriculum is being delivered through tablets. So even the teacher must be taught how to learn, how to use these new technologies, but also how to teach using these new technological platforms. So also our teacher education, the curriculum for developing the next generation of teachers also needs to change. The type of teacher that you need and the type of classroom that you need. And I wouldn't want to overemphasize the importance of advocacy, communication, awareness. Very important. How do we train more science journalists to cover issues around innovations? Because it's those science journalists that are going to talk about the innovations that are out there. They are the ones that are going to report them in the newspapers to say there are these new technologies by these new entrepreneurs. Because our journalists are very afraid to report about science. They would rather report about the politics, about crime, about fashion, whatever. But we need more journalists who are going to report on science and technology, because your newspapers are flooded with politics, fashion, and all sorts of other things. But we need to showcase what type of innovations there are. So let's also upskill and have more science journalism. We will try at next year's event to try to incorporate a pre-workshop, to have a workshop for journalists on how to report on science and technology. With those few words, I'd like to leave you and say thank you for being such a wonderful audience, for engaging our panelists, for engaging the people who have presented. We'll make sure we make the presentations available at the end of the conference on the link. Asante sana, thank you. So just to announce for tomorrow, the factory visits, there's the factory visit to Caustic. The transport will leave at the Julius Nyerere Conference Center at 8 o'clock, and it will go to Caustic, so you'll be there until 1 to 3, and lunch will also be served at Caustic. So please, those who are interested to do the Caustic site, Friday, thank you. So Friday, there's a site visit to Caustic. So those who are interested, the transport leaves at 8, you'll be there till 3:30, and lunch will also be provided at Caustic. So you'll be able to see the smart labs, you'll be able to visit some of the hubs, and you'll be able to engage on some of the opportunities for funding. Thank you.
Ile shughuli kubwa Ile shughuli kubwa tuliokuwa tunaizungumzia na kuisubiri kwa hamu kubwa sasa imeanza. Hapa JNICC Karimjee na Jimkana, mambo yamepamba moto. Ni maonesho makubwa ya viwanda kwa nchi za SADC yanayofanyika hapa Tanzania. Mwananchi popote pale ulipo, ukimkumbusha na mwenzio, njoo ujifunze fursa rukuki zinazopatikana katika nchi za SADC. Maonesho haya tayari yanaendelea na watu wanaendelea kumiminika. Yani hapa bado wewe tu. Kumbuka maonesho haya yamekwisha kuanza tarehe 5, yataendelea hadi tarehe 9 Agosti mwaka huu 2019. Kwa kweli usikose. Tunatekeleza 2019.
Tanzania yetu inang'ara kimataifa. Tanzania yetu uchumi umeimarika. Haya yote ni matokeo chanya. Haya yote ni matokeo chanya. Haya yote ni matokeo chanya. Haya yote ni matokeo chanya.
Haya yote ni matokeo chanya. Tanzania mpya.
Sisi ni Tanzania mpya. Sisi ni Tanzania mpya. Umepanic. Relax. Pumzika kwenye kiti, kibidi pata drinks, relax. Umepanic, relax. This is not what you think, shughuli bado mbichi, relax. Sisi ni Tanzania mpya.